I missed reviewing 9 episodes this season, and after tackling 5 last time, well, it means now it's time to tackle the 4 that Equestria Girls Month neglected. Were they worth skipping over, or have I ended up missing some gems? The only way to find out is by diving head first into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another special edition of Pones N Stuff. While this set of episodes only contains 4 in comparison to the missed episode part 1's 5, it's imperative to realise its importance, because these 4 episodes, Marks and Recreation, Once Upon a Zeppelin, Secrets and Pies, and Uncommon Bond, had the unenviable task of building up to Shadowplay and getting you all excited. Then again, the tail end to a season is something that the series as a whole has not managed to get right a lot. It's one that's so up and down, I'm actually considering what in the blue hell goes through their minds arranging this stuff. You want the episode quality to be consistent going into a finale to make it feel awesome, right? Well, I'm hoping these 4 manage to, because if they don't, it'll make what Shadowplay did even more ridiculous, because that episode was pretty good. I'm just hoping they didn't save all their eggs in one basket for it and end up giving me a lot of episodes that weren't the best quality. Well, there's only one way to find out. We need to dive headfirst straight into this thing and see what treasure I can pull up. Marks and Recreation is where we start, and it leaves me standing on uneven ground, as what should have been a carefree and fun romp of a cutie mark camp turned into a heavy episode dealing with the pressure of conforming to societal norms and rejecting authority under the guise of revolutionary ideology. Now, while I have no problem with such strong thematic socio-political storytelling coming to fruition, I do have an issue with it sapping the joy out of what could have been a very fun episode without ever trying to balance that, and it was too heavy-handed and too glad-handed in its own measure, with its singularity meaning it wasn't given much room to manoeuvre, with time being filled out with small montages and an incredibly monotone and incredulous musical number that further highlighted how hard this episode was trying to drag its heels in the thematic mud. And while I fully understand what this episode was trying to do by having us gain sympathy for Rumble through the relatability of his indecision over his own future, I just wish it could have been executed without being so dense, which would have allowed for creativity to march on through, as the stale environment and designs we had on show left the animation clinging to life support, while the pace and slow-burning narrative progression ensured that it never got a chance to get its foot off the ground. Thank God, though, for the CMC's maturing attitude and passionate voice acting alongside Rumble's abrasive performance and development, alongside a message of spreading your wings and trying new things, coming home remarkably strong considering how mired the story was by its contrasting vigour. Because if not for these elements, it would have tumbled down an increasingly steep hill and laid broken beneath our feet. It was an episode with promise, and while it took an aspect of equestrian youth society and amplified it for the first time in many seasons, which was a joy to see, it wasn't anywhere near the out-and-out success its actions would have anticipated. Overall, Marks and Recreation scored a total of 7 out of 25, which is a D-. Not the best start, but we do have less episodes to get through. Let's keep on rolling. Following on from that, Once Upon a Zeppelin flies into view, and what a surprising airship ride this turned out to be, because what I presumed to be a fun-filled adventure through the skies turned out to be just that, as it ended up turning on its dramatic and emotional scale up to 11, as it made Twilight's sense of duty and compassion be inserted into a plot device that made something otherwise forgettable into an out-and-out trailblazer, where every interaction and reaction hit home while making you laugh your arse off whenever her parents and Shining Arm's bravado came into view, while Iron Will's return was a welcome one, even though he was more of a conceited arsehole than he was 5 seasons ago. Star Tracker won the hearts of bronies aplenty through his awkwardly cute demeanour, which, while creepy as hell at times, was endearing enough to even make me like him. which is honestly quite fantastic. The messages of choosing selfishness over selflessness, the well-being of yourself over others, and the roller coaster ride that a giving attitude is in reality, shored up this episode to portray itself as honestly as possible, and it was made all the better for it. The animation did much better than expected, as it had facial expressions out the ass and set pieces aplenty, as everything fell into place quite fantastically. However, what let this episode down was the musical contribution not even registering, as the characters did more than enough to compensate. And while it did help accent the emotional scenes very well, it never went above and beyond to make me realise that it was there outside of Iron Will's rock scenes, which got tiring for their repetitiveness. Even though this does manage to deal most of the damage, there's more than enough for this episode to stay afloat, even though it is a little lower than it would have been otherwise. Overall, Once Upon a Zeppelin scored a total of 17 out of 25, which is a B-, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is more like it. Let's hope the next one can match it. Are you ready for some secrets and pies? Because I sure wasn't with this one. After quite a few episodes this season that had minimal premises that barely even tried to give me entertainment, I was fully expecting this one to follow suit with its brethren. However, what we got instead was an episode that threw laughs out a mile a minute and a story that stretched itself to its limits as it balanced itself tonally well, as tense drama and comedy flowed through its veins with ease. The animation was surprisingly aloof, particularly in Pinky's abundant facial expressions, with transitions, effects, and a jagged rainbow coming in quite fantastically in its good place, while the message of understanding how honesty trumps lies any day might be slightly borrowed from Where the Apple Lies, but was reapplied in context and emotional power to resonate much more to this episode's benefit over its Season 6 numerical equivalent. It was a joy to watch for sure, but it had misgivings everywhere to contrast with that good mood. Pace-wise and structurally, it was indecisive, it relied way too much on Pinky to be cohesive on the ever-increasing character front, especially when they didn't matter in the longest term. The music outside of some sleuthy jazz was absent, and it was so overblown and in your face in regards to the action of Party Horse, I can see how a lot may be turned off by it. It's solid, and it had done enough to be in my good books, but it was rough around the edges to the point where you'd be cut trying to scale it. It rewards you when you shut your brain off and enjoy the insanity of it, but once you try to switch it back on, you start noticing what was wrong with it, and the sheen comes off it quite quickly. This episode was a welcome change in comparison to most of what I've recently reviewed. Then again though, it shouldn't go around proclaiming itself to be the saviour of the latter half of the season. That's Once Upon a Zeppelin's job, and it should not try to take credit for it. This was a good time, no alcohol required, but with some structural independence needing work on and its failures needing to be secured and mended properly, it's really not that good in comparison with some of the absolute barnstormers we've had this season, but it is definitely just above average. Then again, if it had managed to fix all of its problems, we'd definitely be looking at the surprise of the season. Then again, considering what we had, I should just be happy with it and move on. Overall, Secrets and Pies scored a total of 14 out of 25, which is a C+. Now, that may be a little lower than Once Upon a Zeppelin, but it's still good enough. We reach the final episode, and I'm hoping I get something good. Unfortunately, we arrive at Uncommon Bond with my hopes dashed, as this episode was as alien as no fish and chips on Friday and no Sunday roast on, well, Sunday. Because what a befuddling mess this was, and without question, before I even get into the reasons why, it was the worst Starlight Glimmer episode to date, alongside the unmitigated failure that was No Second Prances. You have every right to fight me in the comments section, because your opinion matters as much as mine does. The conflict of this one was handled so forcefully without subtlety, as both Starlight and Sunburst emphasised it to no end. It just became insufferable to watch, as I got more and more irritated the longer it went on, and the decision to include 4 montages with the same musical track in 13 minutes to pad out the thin premise didn't help. And neither did the slowest of most episodes have been pace-wise. to the point where those repetitive montages showed their ineffectiveness for all to see, while the music, outside of what I've noted, was DOA, as the animation does a small little collection of things but barely batted an eyelid at me. Hell, the characters were unremarkable, as Twilight and Starlight's voice acting was the saving grace, as a strong moral about enjoying friends' company and a heartwarming ending melted the ice, but it left frostbite in its wake. And the thing is, I don't want to spend too long talking about this, because it, for me, was the third worst episode of the season. And you know what, the more I talk about it, the more angry I'm going to get. Now, you know what, I enjoyed ripping on Hard to Say Anything last time for its poor quality, but this is one that could have been a nostalgic reflection on both Sunburst and Starlight's friendship. Instead, it turned into a nightmare, and it's without question the most disappointing episode that Season 7 has bequeathed to me. And you know what? I'm happy I can just close the door on analysing episodes for the season. I just wish that I had done this on time and not missed it, because the last episode of the season that I could have done would have been Shadowplay, and I could have said, you know what, it may have been inconsistent as high hell, but it at least ended on a positive note. Instead, I am left sitting here, mulling that my final impression of Season 7 was this disaster of an episode. It wasn't out and out the worst episode I've ever seen of this show, but the fact that it was only a couple of points off of it should be an indication of how poor this episode was. It got lucky. That message saved its ass. If that message was stripped away and thrown into the ocean overboard, this would have sunk right to the bottom. It shows what happens when a good bit of moral reasoning can come to the rescue, eh? I am not going to remember this episode in a hurry, despite what decent revival effort it managed to make for itself. Overall, Uncommon Bond scored a total of 5 out of 25, which is an E+. In closing, while I'm happy that this was slightly better than the collection of 5 we saw in the last missed episodes video, I am still quite disappointed, because while we did get some decent, good quality meats in the sandwich, they were put together by 2 slices of very mouldy bread, meaning it's not the most appetizing thing to look at, let alone taste. And it wasn't the collection of sweet, tantalizing desserts that I honestly anticipated going in, despite a couple of amazing surprises. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you wanted to see something that was so emblematic about this season's inconsistencies, this is it. Having 2 quite poor episodes in between 2 above average ones, coming so close to one another. And it's not like last time where I had an episode 8 going up against an episode 13 sometime later. These all happened consecutively, 1 week after the other. This is ridiculous. And it boggles my mind that this season even managed to do this. It's frustrating, and it's really, really annoying that I keep having to bring this damn thing up. But the thing is, I'm not done, because in 6 days, I'm going to be summing up Season 7 as a whole and closing the doors on the first season of Pones N Stuff. So, what the hell am I going to do if I'm this angry now? How the hell am I going to act in that? Well, it's only fair that I keep you all waiting to see my final opinion on the season as a whole, which goes for the episodes, the songs, who I believe is the character of the season as a whole, and of course, what my little opinion is on the feature film, because I haven't yet talked about it. And that's all to look forward to as Pones N Stuff Series 1 closes its doors and builds up the anticipation towards what Season 8 can hold. But that is for another day. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching. This has been a Missed Episodes Part 2 special edition of Pones N Stuff for the CC Network. And I will see you all next time.